Great. And we're off. Welcome, everybody. A nice full house today. Welcome to the Small Business Masterminds webinar about how to become a time management ninja, how to go from being a lazy, procrastinating, undisciplined slob to becoming a master of time management. So a couple of general comments before we go on. There you go, that's a ninja. It's been proven time and time again that passively sitting and listening to someone talking means that you're going to forget 90% of what you've heard in less than a week. So if you want to get as much return on your investment of time in being part of this workshop, you need to participate, and the best way to ensure that you'll focus by working through the set of worksheets as we go along. And the worksheets, you know, they've got that link there, tiny.cc/TimeL page to go and download the worksheet and print it out if you haven't done so yet. So please follow along with what I'm talking about on your worksheet. If you get lost, put up your hand. You put up by clicking in the mood button, and if you, my mood button at the top of your screen, and there you've got options for raising your hand. So if you raise your hand, I will stop and check in with you, because it means that you're stuck somehow. And so on page 2 of your worksheet is an explanation of the webinar screens, and any questions about that, ask, obviously. Yes, so don't get distracted by Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, email, text message, etc., 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 etc. Turn it all off. Don't think you can be focused on Facebook and get value from this workshop at the same time. It ain't gonna happen. Multitasking is actually a myth, even for the women, believe me. So let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Roland Hanekoek, and I'm a business coach, and I help small business owners become less daunted, less overwhelmed in their lives as business owners, and instead to have fun in their businesses again and to build businesses that sustain them for years to come. And as it happens, that's what we're talking about today as well. So I'm also the author of a series of business books for small business owners, the 10 Truths books for business owners. So today, Small Business Masterminds webinar is actually about time management, mastering time management. And my outcomes for today are these. First of all, I want you all to walk away enthusiastic and with at least one action that you're committed to taking back in your business around using your time better in your business and feel better about your levels of efficiency while you're at it. And number 2, I want you to all leave with a greater appreciation about how important it is to be great at what you do as well as to be great at running at your business. Because a lot of business owners, you know, like us, are great tradespeople, great professionals. We know a lot about our profession or our trade, but to be a great small business owner and to build a fun business that sustains you for years to come, you have to have a solid understanding of all the key aspects of developing your business, not just your profession or your trade. And so these are the key aspects of business that all of us business owners must wrestle with from time to time as we're developing our business. Vision and purpose of your business, planning, strategic thinking, goal setting, numbers and taking control of your business, having your finger on the pulse of your business, financial management and profit, money in other words, marketing, customers, sales, systemization, planning, innovation, continuous improvement, quality assurance, any of those words that you want to use for that. Your staff, people in the business, leadership, and the rhythm of business. And, well, you know, it's just too much to focus on, right? It's just too much to focus on. It's overwhelming and it's daunting. So I'm committed to helping small business owners around the world become less overwhelmed, less daunted about the demands of developing your business and to have more fun. And so I'm going to make you an offer later on to take a really easy next step on that journey to having more fun in your business at the end of the webinar. So don't go away now, you hear. And we had a couple more people join, Nikki amongst them. Welcome, Nikki. We're just going through our setup. Please follow that link, tiny.cc TimeL page, which is in your chat window if you still need to download the webinar worksheet. But before we go on, I'd just like you to go to your worksheet, and on the second page of your worksheet, you'll see a question with some space underneath it. And the question is this: right now, this coming month, what is the biggest challenge you face in your business? What is the one thing that keeps you awake most? What is your most pressing issue? Take a moment to write down the answer on your worksheet, and I'm going to give you a minute's silence to write the answer down. And that's probably enough. So this is our agenda for today. And as I said before, any questions, put up your hand or type in the comment box or the chat window. So this is our agenda. We're going to check in with where you are right now around time management and efficiency, procrastination, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about how time is, time and time management is actually big business like dieting. We're going to go through a story, case history, story of Darren, and then we'll talk about the lessons from Darren. We're going to talk about the two big questions that you're going to be able to use to help you become a time management ninja. I'm going to talk to you about another story, my own story, some lessons from that. Then we're going to talk about more procrastination. And then I'm going to make you a special offer, and we're going to wind up with some easy peasy actions, or easy peasy, simple, practical actions that you can take. That's our agenda for the day. I trust that sounds okay. Any questions, please ask. Click on the My Mood button and put your hand up, or type in the chat window. So, what about your outcomes? You've heard me say what my outcomes are for today. Now, what about your outcomes? Just below the box on the second page of your worksheet that you just filled in about your most pressing issue, there's also a box with space to write down what your outcome is for being here today. What do you want to get from being here today? What outcome do you want to achieve? Just take a moment and reflect on that and write that down in the box. It's really important to reflect on what you want to achieve yourself. What do you want to get? Because ultimately, you've got to be in charge of that. So then you can decide, well, if that's what I want to get, how do I have to be? What do I have to do? How do I have, what state do I have to put myself in to be able to get that on this webinar? So let's get started, and let's begin to check in how everyone feels about numbers and predicting the future with a quick poll. And the poll comes here. The poll comes here. Hang on. And this is the poll. The questions are also on your worksheet on the top of page 3. And the question is this: thinking about my time management and how efficient I am, I feel A, ashamed because I waste enormous amounts of time. I'm the world's worst procrastinator, a professor of procrastination, a lazy, undisciplined, and inefficient slob. Or B, I'm annoyed and frustrated because I know I'm holding my business back because I procrastinate and I get distracted a lot. C, I'm confused because some days I'm like a machine and everything just flows, and other days I just get nothing done. D, all of the above. It depends on when you ask me. Or E, I'm inspired and excited. My days fly by. I always seem to be in the zone. I have time to do everything I want. I'm writing a book about becoming a time management ninja. So please click A, B, or C, or D, or E there. A couple more votes to come in. Great, fantastic. So there we go. Nobody scored A, thank God. That's great. We've got one or two people scoring B. and most people are scoring C and D, and luckily there's no one on scoring E, because I would hate that person with a passion. So everybody's in that B, C, and D category, and that's of course mostly what I would expect, because most small business owners feel a bit frustrated and confused, or all of them at once, because like all of you here, you're all great technicians, great carpenters, great architects, great web developers, great mortgage brokers or real estate agents, but none of you ever went to time management school, did you, and learned how to become efficient. And so you feel frustrated and you feel annoyed because you don't get the things done. Let me just get rid of this. So you feel frustrated. Anybody remember what that movie's from? From what movie that was? It's the mother of Brian in Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian. Anyway, so you feel frustrated and annoyed because you don't get the things done you want to get done, and you give yourself a hard time, and you get to the end of the day, and the mountain of stuff on your to-do list is just as big as it was at the beginning of the day. And it's not that you don't know what you should be doing to move your business forward. It's just that you just don't have the time to do them, because you're always running around managing crises and extinguishing brush fires. And even if you do find some time to do the business development stuff, you waste half the day procrastinating and getting distracted by stuff that doesn't matter. There's an airplane flying in the background. Sorry about that. Luckily it's not a Malaysian airplane. So even if you find some time to do the business development stuff, you waste half the day procrastinating and getting distracted by stuff that doesn't matter. And in the meantime, there's always another crisis to manage somewhere. You run around from employee crisis to client crisis to supplier crisis to compliance crisis to cash crisis, and all the way back to the beginning again. And so you're always behind. And what that leads to is that you should spend more time doing the business development instead of being in the business. After all, everybody tells you so, and hence you feel inadequate, not good enough as business owners. And what's worse, in a way, is that everyone is actually right. You simply cannot build a fun, healthy, sustainable business by being in the business, by managing crises and swinging the hammer, as it were, all the time. Developing a business that sustains you for years to come takes dedicated focus on being an effective business owner as opposed to an effective business doer. And so the business stagnates and you feel frustrated and overwhelmed, and that's not a great set of outcomes. And I'm sure that you all agree with that. So the purpose of this webinar is how can we take the first step to start to get less overwhelmed, daunted and frustrated, get our business moving in the right direction, start to have fun in business again like we used to, and build a business that sustains us for years to come. Let's get right into it. Hey, so look, there's another couple of people joined. Welcome, lovely to see you. In case you don't know, if you want to ask any questions, you've got the chat window on the left, or at the top you see a button or a link called My Mood. If you hover your mouse over My Mood, you get a few options. You can either raise your hand, which tells me that you have a burning question or you're stuck, or you can stick up your thumb saying yes, you've got to ask the question, or no with a thumb down. Those of you who just joined, if you haven't downloaded and printed out the worksheet, please do so now. You'll see there in the chat window the link to the resources page where you can download the worksheet and work your way through as we're going along. So, as I said, let's get into it. I'm going to tell you a few stories. And, I'm going to tell you a few stories because time management is a big topic. Human beings love giving themselves a hard time over their lack of efficiency and discipline, and we just love beating ourselves up over it. And in my experience, small business owners are hardest of all on themselves. Nearly every client I've ever started working with will at some stage early on in our engagement confess to me that they are actually truly the world's worst procrastinators. and lazy slobs, and that they specifically want me to get really, really tough with them because they deserve to feel the impact of my size 13 boots on their backside. And that's another plank. What I might just do is close the door. One moment, talk amongst yourselves. Sorry about that, most unprofessional. It'll be better. Yeah, they want my size 13 boot up their backside. And I think that time management is probably only exceeded by dieting as a favorite motivation for self-castigation of people generally. And like time management, dieting is a big business too. Here's a great book from Amazon. In researching this topic, I went to Amazon and I typed in time management books in Amazon, and I found more than 20,000 titles. More than 20,000 titles such as Time Warrior, Eat That Frog, Getting Things Done, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's an 8th habit even, and the 4-hour work week, etc., etc., etc. And what's especially amazing about this, when you think about it, is that all of these 20,000 books, all of them will make one solemn promise that within the covers of this book is a unique and proven method to take you from being a slob to being a time management ninja and master of efficiency. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. 20,000 unique methods. So which of these unique and proven methods actually works best? And if you pick the wrong one, if you buy the wrong book, does that mean that you're going to be wasting more time? Even I got in on the act some time ago. I designed my own unique and proven time management method. It was all based on the concept of juggling balls and making sure the balls wouldn't hit the floor. It involved the whiteboard and different color stickies that could be moved around the board, and it was brilliant. Look, it really was brilliant. I can't use a better word to describe it. I can't tell a lie, but my method was going to change the face of modern business, honestly. But, when all is said and done, I actually have to admit that really it was just another approach to managing your to-do lists. And that's the deal, you see. All of the 20,000 titles on Amazon, as well as my own brilliant method, all of the proven unique methods fall into 2 camps. 2 camps. Firstly, there are the many variations on working with to-do lists. Such as those. And some of those to-do lists involve a perpetual list, and others involve a new list every day or every week, and some list methods tell you to divide your task in 3 or 4 or 6 different categories, and others suggest you just dump every action, no matter how small or large, in the same list, and some ask you to filter out the most important tasks and to do them first, and others suggest you do the one you like least first, etc., etc., etc. And the second approach revolves around varying ways to manage your diary and your day. So 2 methods. One is about the time management methods. One of them is about to-do lists and how you manage them, and the other one is about diaries and how you manage your diary. Some tell you to keep lots of blank space in your diary. Some direct you to plan your day in 10-minute blocks, and others ask you to just stick the big rocks in your diary. Funny story. I actually worked briefly, I have to say, very briefly, for a specialist time management consultancy firm, and we consulted to corporate clients in the city. And the consultancy revolved around some specific, unique, and proven IP that we talked to the clients. And the IP largely consisted of dividing your tasks up between those that took more or less than 10 minutes to complete. And those that took more than 10 minutes would be blocked out into your diary, Outlook or Gmail or whatever. And those that took less than 10 minutes to complete would go into your task list. It also involved changing a setting in Outlook that allowed the minimum time interval that you could block out in your calendar to be down to 10 minutes. Now, look, I want you to be aware that I'm taking an enormous personal risk sharing this IP with you. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement when I started working with them. Clearly, they felt that the sheer brilliance of this methodology had to be protected. So by sharing it with you just now, I'm in breach and I may well be run out of this town, tarred and feathered. Please don't tell anyone. Keep it to yourselves. Because the consultancy charged, and probably still does, charge absolute fortunes for their unique, proven and brilliant techniques. And the corporate clients, such as this one, the corporate clients paid it, and it simply never ceases to amaze me what the corporate world will pay for. So did it work? And what about those 20,000 titles on Amazon, and what about my own inspired methodology? Do they work? Well, of course they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have published the books in the first place. The methods all work for the person who wrote the book, but that ain't you, is it? Here's another story from a few years ago. You might have noticed that most of my stories take place a few years ago. And just in case you're wondering, yes, I have many stories, and they all happened a few years ago. And you might think that I had a very busy time a few years ago and what a boring life I lead now, but believe me, they are all real stories. I don't make stories up, I just change the details, obviously. So, just saying, okay. So a few years ago, I worked with a client called Darren. And Darren used to beat himself up something shocking over his laziness and his procrastination and his addictions to distractions. Mind you, this was, I think it was before Facebook was very big, so he obviously wasn't addicted to Facebook so much. But anyway, on a Monday, Darren came in to one of our regular sessions in a particularly foul mood. And on my inquiry about his weekend, he said, I didn't get that bloody tax return done again all weekend. I'm just hopeless. I'm just so lazy. I spent all weekend cleaning out the garage, mowing the lawn, watching the rugby, and taking my girlfriend out to lunch instead. To be honest, I've been procrastinating for weeks over this tax return, and even after making the decision to get it done this weekend, I still never made a start on it. Wow. I said, that sounds bad, like that garage. That sounds bad. But look, did you at least enjoy yourself doing those other things? Oh, of course, he replied. It felt really good to get those things done. And what's more, the garage really needed cleaning. You couldn't get into it at all anymore. And the lawn was like this high. The Wallabies won finally, would you believe it? And my girlfriend really appreciated the attention, but that's not the point. I didn't do my tax return after I made a commitment to do so. Look, I understand you're disappointed, I said, but tell me, have you always done your tax return? And Darren pondered for a little while, and he responded by saying, well, yeah, I did ever since I was 18, and my father taught me how to do it. And it actually feels really good completing it myself and getting some sort of refund. So I said, have you ever been late putting it in, and are you late with it now? And he said, oh, no, that would defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? I'd get a penalty, and that would reduce the fun of getting a refund to start with. No, I've never been late. And I still have a couple of weeks to go now. But that's beside the point. I just wanted to get it in a few weeks early in case something came up. I said, in case something came up. Yes, of course. Well, but maybe something did come up. Maybe the lawn came up and the garage and the game and your girlfriend. Maybe they were all more important this weekend. And I said, look, is there actually any real reason to assume that you're not going to get your tax return completed in the next 2 weeks? Well, in case you're wondering, my client Darren, of course, he completed his tax return the next weekend, and he still had a week to spare in case something came up. And look, I have no doubt that now, a few years later, he'll still be completing his tax return and getting it in on time. Although, actually, I saw him the other day by coincidence, and he's moved to Hong Kong, so it might all be different there, who knows. Anyway, these are the lessons from Darren. A couple of lessons from Darren. Not least, that doing your own tax return may be false economy measured against the joy of cleaning out a garage. But what are your takeaways from that story? On your worksheet, there's space to write down your top takeaways or interesting observations from others. So feel free to write down your own thoughts on your sheet, and I'd love some of you to share yours, and you'll have an opportunity to do so in just a minute. So if you want to share something, think about it and start typing maybe in the chat window. Comments, questions, feedback, confusions. And while we're waiting for that, for comments and feedback, I'll summarize a point of the story from my perspective. You see, I think that we all love to give ourselves a hard time all the time. It's clearly something that dates back to ancient Stone Age history or something. When men were men and women were something else. Something dating back to the days that men ran away from saber-toothed tigers and women were dragged into the cave by their hair or something like that. I don't know. But what I do know is that all of us, and business owners more than most, beat up on ourselves something fierce. Business owners generally are just so ridiculously tough on themselves, it just never ceases to amaze me. So Darren had told himself that as a responsible person, he was to have a tax return, the tax return completed some weeks early, and every week it wasn't completed, he used as an excuse to flagellate himself, even though effectively he made the right decision. So there's a couple of comments we've got at the moment. There's one from Bob in Newcastle. Thanks, Bob. So Bob wonders if Darren got lucky that weekend. No answer. So Kerry in Bathurst. Isn't being tough on yourself one of the reasons that things get done? Says Kerry. Don't we have to be tough on ourselves to make sure that things get completed on time? And yeah, that's right, Kerry. I think that's probably right. It's certainly it's a great question. I often think about that as well, but I think it depends on how you look at it. There's no doubt that if you've been stoned since the Beatles came back from India, and I'm showing my age a little bit there, then you've probably not managed to get much of a business or anything else off the ground. So yes, a certain amount of self-discipline is a useful attribute for business owners. But see, if you'd been stoned since your adolescence, you probably wouldn't have started a business anyway. And the fact that you have started a business or are in the process of doing so means that you have a certain amount of initiative and discipline and determination to start with. And Darren had done his tax return on time for 19 years. He was entitled to have a little bit more trust in himself by now. He was entitled to trust himself to get it done on time, and he was entitled to trust his judgment when he decided to put his girlfriend first that weekend. Because he would undoubtedly get it done and on time, and by learning to trust himself, he could become so much happier and calmer, and he would have enjoyed his weekend much more. And you might say, well, yeah, but it's better to be distrustful and skeptical because that's the only way to stay sharp, the only way to be efficient and effective, and that is where you'd be wrong. Because when you're in a frame of mind like Darren was when he came to see me on a Monday morning, you'll be least likely to do great work, least likely to be efficient, and most of all, least likely to be creative and resourceful. They're all characteristics that you need to build your business. And when you are in a full-blown beat up on yourself storm, or what famous professor of sociology Brené Brown calls in a full-blown shame storm, if you are fully beating up on yourself, you will be in your least resourceful, your least creative state. So to build a great business and a great life, you have to be creative and resourceful. They're characteristics that you need. So doing what you can to allow yourself to be happy and calm is going to lead to much greater outcomes all round. I hope that answers your question, Kerry. No other questions at this moment? Cool. All right, let's move on. Because here we get to the interesting bit. I'm going to shock you in a moment. I'm going to rock your world. I'm going to tell you, that's the previous slide, hang on. As I said, I'm going to shock you, I'm going to rock your world. I'm going to tell you something that will blow your socks off. So I hope you're sitting down and holding on to something, because you see, people only ever do anything in life for one of two reasons. One, because they want to do this thing. They actually want to do it. You actually want, you enjoy looking forward, you want to do this thing. Or two, because you do not want the consequences of not doing this thing. One, because you want to do this thing, or two, because you don't want the consequences of not doing this thing. Boom. There you go. Didn't see that coming, did you? See, Darren wasn't a lazy, procrastinating, good for nothing at all. He wanted to do, he wanted to do the garage. He wanted to deal with the grass. He wanted to watch the Wallabies win a game for a change, and he wanted to spend his time with his girlfriend. And he wanted to do those things, and he didn't particularly want to do his tax return that weekend. And what's more, the consequences of not doing his tax return that weekend were actually minimal. He still had 2 weeks up his sleeve. So Darren actually made entirely the right decision at that time. Now imagine if Darren had somehow managed to be as disciplined as he wanted himself to be, and he'd done the tax return instead of the lawn and the garage, and he would have, etc. He would have potentially have had a much better reason to be down on himself, because he would have probably regretted not watching the game on Sunday, and he most likely would have regretted not having to spend time with his girlfriend. So time management always has to start with two questions. Question one is, how much do I want to do this thing? And question two is, how much do I want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? It really is that simple. As long as you do not have 100% clarity over those two questions, you're always going to confuse the hell out of yourself. You're going to feel exasperated with yourself for being such a procrastinator, and you will always be looking around for another unique and proven time management to turn you into that efficiency ninja. But please, by all means, go and read some of those books on how to manage your time and better and become more efficient. There's some great ones out there. I'm a great fan of Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits, and his approach of assessing urgency versus importance is a powerful way of thinking. But without that clarity that we're just talking about, without that clarity, no method is going to make one iota's worth of difference. Not one. Now, there's more to being efficient and effective than just answering those two questions. It isn't the end of the matter, but it starts there. Just by answering those two questions, you're not going to suddenly going to be able to be procrastination-free forever, but absolutely starts there. So, what else is there? What else do you need to think about to overcome procrastination? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are actually another couple of really important considerations that you should become aware of in order to avoid procrastination and feeling down on yourself. And here's another story, and this story is about myself, and it took place a few years ago, of course. So I've always done a lot of writing. I'm a fairly good writer. I was actually trained as a journalist in the distant past before I became a builder. So I've had a bit of practice and schooling, and I actually enjoy the process. But for years, I wouldn't get much or any writing done at all because of endless procrastination. When I decided to write an article or whatever, I could literally spend days procrastinating and wasting time and getting distracted by everything under the sun. And I used to beat up on myself like you wouldn't believe. But most of the time, if I really persisted, in the end, something would be written, and more often than not, I'd feel quite happy with the outcome. But because it took me so much time to actually sit down and write, because I'd procrastinate so much before pen would actually go to paper or keyboard, I'd rarely end up writing anything because I just couldn't afford the time, right? It would just take days. So one day I realized that the reason I procrastinated and wasted so much time when I decided to write something was that I actually didn't know what I was going to write. And because I didn't know what I was going to write, I couldn't sit down and I'd find different things to do instead of writing. But when I realized this, I decided to change my approach. I decided to trust myself. I decided to trust myself that something would come out as long as I'd start writing. So now when I want to write, most of the time still, I don't know what I'm going to write. But I simply sit down behind the keyboard. I mean, often I don't even know what topic I'm going to write on, right? So I simply sit down behind the keyboard and I start to write. How can you write when you don't know what to write about? Well, I'll just start to write nonsense sometimes. I just start to write whatever pops into my head, stream of consciousness kind of stuff. Often I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to write, but I just start writing about the weather, what I did on the weekend, the last book I read, nonsense, if I have to. It doesn't matter. Once I start writing, I know, I trust myself, and it's been proven to be the case now, that it'll come. And it always does. And all the nonsense I wrote to get started, all the inconsequential stuff, I just throw it out again. It's just a way to get started. And so now I don't procrastinate anywhere near as much anymore, and I get a lot of writing done, and I'm getting better at writing, and I enjoy it, and it's good for my business, and it's actually changed my life and my business. So this is the point of the story. Once we have absolute clarity over what we want to do and what consequences we want to avoid, you know, those two questions that I mentioned after Darren's story, we can often be waylaid by a few other hurdles that lead to major attacks of the procrastination disease. We don't know how to actually do the thing that we want to do. We might want to do it, but we don't actually know how to do it. Or the task we've set ourselves is so enormous, and the enormity of the task is overwhelming, and we just don't even know where to start. Or we're actually unsure what this task involves. So we're just simply not clear what the steps are or where to start. And just like this cartoon, which describes me as much as anybody else, I'm sure. So just like this cartoon, then we might actually go and end up spending some time on the internet. And look, there are probably a lot of other reasons, or a lot of other those kinds of hurdles that I suppose the ones that I mentioned, that we don't know where to start, or we don't know how to, or we don't know what is involved. We're not clear about that, what the first steps are. There's probably more of those kinds of hurdles that lead to procrastination and being tempted by distractions. And because I see this all the time in my own case and with my clients. A client, for example, might decide in one of my sessions, right, I'm going to write a marketing plan, and this is what I need. That's what I need now. I need a marketing plan. So next week I'm going to start. I'm going to start a marketing plan. And then at our next session, nothing's happened about the marketing plan, and the client either makes all kinds of excuses, or they beat up on themselves for being a procrastinator. And this might go on for another couple of weeks until we really dig in and uncover what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, it really is, 9 times out of 10, what we find is that the client actually isn't clear how to go about writing the marketing plan, what the steps are, where to start. And then we spend time, and then when we do spend, client and I spend time getting clear about the steps in the process of writing a marketing plan, the whole procrastination issue goes away. So we might decide, okay, well, let's just draw a mind map. Let's just draw a mind map of all the bits that need to go in there somehow. Or we might say, how about writing the content page of your marketing plan, or to start with. But just get something started. Once you get started with something simple and easy that you know how to do, that whole procrastination issue just simply disappears, and people become actually quite efficient. Like I said, there are many variants to this mechanism. 9 times out of 10, though, when you get attacked by the procrastination disease, it's a sign that there's something wrong with your clarity, or with your understanding of the task, or your confidence that you know how and where to start and how to do it. Working with business owners for many years now, I actually think that the concept of laziness, like Homer, doesn't actually exist for business owners. Of course, everybody likes to lie on the couch on a Sunday or whatever, but the lazy business owners, that concept actually doesn't exist. I don't think business owners are ever lazy. If you were a lazy person, you simply wouldn't have started a business to begin with. I think the phenomenon of procrastination and laziness is always a sign of something else. And once you've cleared away the various hurdles, as I've talked about, things start falling into place again and life starts flowing again. So many problems that business owners face in the day-to-day running of their business are caused by not giving themselves enough space, because allowing yourself more time and space to ask yourself those two big questions, or to investigate what's going on when you find yourself procrastinating, truly is one of the first big steps towards having more fun in business and building a business that sustains you for years to come. I promise you. So, let's have a look at the top takeaways. And again, there's space on your worksheet to write down your own top insights and learnings and questions, and also if you hear other people's comments and questions or insights that resonate with you, you feel free, of course, to write it down. So I want you to ask yourself, what are the top 3 insights that you've had since being on this webinar? What do you see now that you didn't see before? Or maybe, what are your top 3 questions? In other words, just take a moment to focus on the most important stuff that's going around in your head. And I'm just going to give you another minute to reflect on that. So, while you guys are typing in some of your comments and feedback, I'm going to sum up the big insights that we've talked about so far. And please, any questions, any comments, any feedback, type them in the chat window on the left bottom of your screen. So let me remind you of the principles first. All time management methods work for the person who designed it, but that doesn't mean they're going to work for you. All time management methods can be divided in 2 types, those that teach you how to manage your to-do list and those that teach you how to use your calendar. And this is, by the way, on page 6 of your worksheet. These big insights are listed there as well, and it's particularly useful if you could go through them with me as we're going through it. So all time management methods can be divided in 2 types, those that teach you how to manage your to-do list and those that teach you how to use your calendar, your day planner, or whatever it is that you use. Avoiding procrastination and becoming an efficiency ninja starts with asking yourself, why do I want to do this thing? Or why do I want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? Unless you have clarity over those 2 questions, you cannot be efficient. Beating up on yourself does not make it easier for you to do great work. Quite the opposite. Procrastination and getting distracted is usually a sign of some other hurdle. If you started a business, you are not by nature a lazy person or a procrastinator. Just get over it. You're not. I guarantee you. And lastly, to be efficient and effective as a business owner, you have to allow yourself space and time to reflect on your tasks and your priorities. Right. So we've had a couple of comments come in. I might not be able to get to all of them. So if I don't get to yours, feel free to email me after, but let me get to a couple of questions. So Lisa from Brisbane. I've heard a lot of great things about the book Getting Things Done by David Allen, and wants to know if I recommend it. Yeah, look, I think I know it well. Getting Things Done is a solid method and it works well. It's one of those many methods, but it's a solid, well-researched and well-put-together method. But it works well if your brain is the type of brain that likes working with big lists. My brain isn't like that, and so it doesn't work for me. But it's a well-researched, solid method, and there's even apps that you can get on your iPhone or your Android phone that's integrate with that whole method. It's good. It's good stuff. As I said, look, personally, I love Stephen Covey's approach in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. the approach of the 4 quadrants, and it's actually on the resources page for this webinar. That link up there, tony.cc time page. There's actually a worksheet on the resources page with those 4 quadrants, the 4 quadrants of time management. Have a look at it, but and download. But surely, so if GTD, as it's often referred to, getting things done, or as the boys from KPI, key person of influence, refer to as GSD, getting shit done. As it's GTD, if it works for you, if it's right for your brain, it's fantastic. Several clients of mine in the past have worked with it. There are also, and there's, like I said, there's iPhone apps as well, quite good. But just think about the message that I've been hammering in this webinar. Don't think that, you know, getting things done or any method is going to fix your problem unless you give yourself the space and time I talked about before. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Right, Ken from Sydney. Ken asks if I still use the method I developed myself with the juggling. Yeah, great. Look, great. Thanks, Ken. And it demonstrates the other thing about time management. No, I actually don't use that method anymore, that approach anymore, because it's outlived its usefulness. I don't need it anymore. Not that I don't procrastinate or get distracted. Facebook is a terrible affliction, and the constant barrage of email can screw my days up enormously too. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to really ask myself the questions. And sometimes I just want to fiddle all day as well. So a lot of my time is taken up with developing new ideas to market myself and writing, as I said, and that takes a lot of thinking time. So sometimes it can look as if I'm wasting time, but really I'm just mulling things over, letting things bubble away in my brain. But sometimes I really need to get certain things done, and I can't allow myself to be distracted by email or Facebook and whatever else there is. And so what I do there, this is just another method, right? I mean, I could call it my, well, it's my special new proven method. Unique, brilliant, and it will change the face of modern business, and I should write a book about it. But what I do is I set up my laptop on a different table, and I just open Microsoft Word, and I simply don't allow myself to open Facebook on the laptop or email. And if I really feel like I've got to check up on my email or anything, then I look it up on my phone only, and then I get a heap of stuff done. So I do think that that's another brilliant, proven, unique time management method. I'm sure you all agree. And I've just shared my IP with you now. I have got a copyright application in, so be careful or I'll sue the pants off you. But it just demonstrates that there is always another method, always another way to skin a cat. It just depends what works for you. And that is it. But for me to be efficient with that method by putting the laptop over there only happens when I have absolute clarity over those 2 questions that I mentioned before. Another method I've adopted, brilliant as well. It's that I swore that I'd never look at Twitter again. Twitter simply drove me insane, literally. And one day I just installed it from my computers, and I just don't go there anymore. It's a temptation I don't need, and I don't know how to resist it once it's up. Clearly, I'm obviously not strong enough, so I just thought I'd get rid of it. I thought I'm joining a 12-step program for Twitter addicts, but Twitter Anonymous or something. But yeah, so that's in answer to that question, Ken. I don't use the juggling method anymore because I don't have that many different things to do at the same time that I've got to juggle. It's more my procrastination and my time management works a different way now. Let's move on. I mentioned before that I want to make an offer to you that I've designed to make it as easy as possible for you to take a step forward out of feeling daunted and overwhelmed about all those key business development priorities that are screaming for your attention every day. As I said, I am completely and utterly committed to help as many small business owners in the world as possible have more fun in business and build businesses that sustain them for years to come. So remember, I asked you to focus and write down your most pressing issue, your biggest challenge in business right now. What is your most pressing issue? Have another look at what you write down, or write down, and there's actually some more space, I think, on the, yes, the bottom of page 6, there's some more space. to write down your most pressing issue, because it might have changed since the start of this webinar. So check in with yourself on that. So here's the deal. I want to help you with that most pressing issue. I want to help you find some simple, effective steps forward in relation to that big challenge, your most pressing issue. And I've created a super special, easy peasy, lemon squeezy offer for people who attend these Mastermind webinars. And this is what you will get. You will get a really powerful written business health report for free. You'll get a hard copy of my first book, The 10 Truths for Raising a Healthy, Bouncy Business, for free. You get to sit down for an hour with me, face-to-face or via Skype, one-on-one, and you get to gain clarity and focus about where you are now and where you want to get to in your business for free, and you will walk away with clarity and insight and one or more simple action steps that will start to move you forward past that big, most pressing issue and towards having more fun in your business again. That's the offer. And all you have to do is to make a donation of $100 or more, if you want to, of course, to my favorite charity here in Sydney, the Wayside Chapel. It's a fantastic organization. It truly will be the most fun and most effective charity donation you've ever made in your life. The offer is repeated on your worksheet as well. I think it's on page 7. And the web address is there as well. The web address I actually might actually type into the box here. The waysidechapel.com donations. HTTP. The waysidechapel.com donations. There you go. So there's a link to follow if you want to. So let's get back to the grind. Remind you once more of the big insights. All time management methods work for the person who designed it. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you. All time management methods can be divided in 2 types. Those that teach you how to manage your to-do list and those that teach you how to use your calendar. Avoiding procrastination, becoming an efficiency ninja starts with asking yourself, why do I want to do this thing, or why do I want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? Unless you have absolute clarity over those 2 questions, you cannot be efficient, and beating up on yourself does not make it easier for you to become efficient and do great work. Usually, if not always, procrastination and getting distracted is a sign of some other hurdle. And if you started a business, you personally, as a person, you human being, you are not by nature a lazy person or a procrastinator. And to be efficient and effective as a business owner, you have to allow yourself space and time to reflect on your time, your tasks and priorities. Right, we're getting into action now. The business end. Nothing's going to change unless you take action. So there's a special resources page, as we said, the special resources page that goes to this webinar. And the link you've got up there, tony.cc timeout page, and there are other resources on there. I already mentioned the 4 quadrants worksheet, and there's a couple other ones as well. So this is what I want you to do. First, you've got to set some time aside. You've got to set some time aside over the next few days to be able to get into this. Be sure to do this, because if you do not set some time aside for this, to set some time aside to do something with what you've learned and what we've talked about and the information I've given you today in the next few days, then coming on this webinar, spending your lunchtime hour on this webinar has been a waste of your time. A waste of your time. It's been a distraction, right? The only thing that ultimately makes any difference is what actions you take, and that means you've got to set time aside. So here are a few simple actions I'm going to encourage you to take in the next week or 2. And they are repeated on your worksheet as well on page 7. They start on page 7. Yep. So I'm going to ask you to go to the resources page for the webinar and download the articles and tools that interest you. There's a few of them. I'd like you to spend some time looking over some of those resources, like that 4 quadrants tool, the 4 quadrants urgent versus important, and the questions that go with that tool. Then I'd love you to read the Forbes article, Time Management for the Rest of Us. It's a really nice, simple summary of the concepts of time management. And then on a blank piece of paper, I want you to do this. Draw a scale, just like you've got up on the screen at the moment. A horizontal scale from 0 to 10, and you label this your Master of Time Management scale. And 10 on the scale is that you are so efficient that they should write a book about you. And 0 is the opposite. What number would you give yourself on that scale? Ask yourself the question. That's the next action. So first, what number? Just a hard number. Mark it on the scale, put a number beside it. Doesn't matter what it is, it's your personal scale. Could be 4, could be 5, could be 10, could be 3, whatever. Or an increment between that, 4.5, 4.1, whatever, 6.3. Now, the next step is to ask yourself the question, what do I need to do this coming week? What can I do this coming week to move one small increment up my Master of Time Management scale? What specific action must I take to move one small increment, say from 6 to 6.1, or from 7.3 to 7.4, or 5 point whatever. Anyway, so a small increment. What specific action must I take? Will I take? Do I want to take? Can I take this coming week to move one small increment up this scale? Now get your diary out and book that specific action or actions in your diary in the coming week. And then next week at the same time, so next week Thursday, ask yourself the same question. Now, what's really important to understand in this scaling and action exercise, there's a very important distinction you need to understand. And that is about what an action is. An action is that it's something that you can actually book time in your diary out for. So you can set half an hour aside to do this thing. That's an action. If you write down, next week I'm going to do less procrastinating, that's not an action, that's an intention. Or next week I'm going to be more efficient, that's an intention. Or next week I'm going to look at my diary more, that's an intention. An action is, next week on Tuesday, I'm booking out half an hour in my diary to do a specific thing. So that's the difference between actions and intentions. So that's it for this webinar. Please make sure you do these actions. They're not going to take much time at all, but taking the time to do them means you'll be taking the first steps to building a fun business that sustains you for years to come. So go and do it. And finally, don't forget the special offer. Again, you've got that link there, thewaysidechapel.com/donations. And it's also on the worksheets, and it's on the resources page and on your screen. So just go ahead and do it. It'll be the best $100 you have ever donated to anything or anyone. I promise you. So that was the offer again. Go and do it now. I'd love you to take up the offer. You will get a mountain of valuable insights, learning, and clarity out of the Health Check, the report, my first book, and the session. I promise you, it's the best deal you've had all year. So get a step to get a step closer to having fun in business. And the website's going to love you too. Because that's me. What I'm about is more fun, less overwhelm, and build a business that sustains you for years to come. Any last questions? Anybody got any last questions? So if you take nothing else away from this webinar, ask yourself the question today: how can I make this coming week a little bit more fun in business than last week? Try it out. I know you'll be surprised about the impact it will have on your business in your life. I promise you. No last questions? Nobody's got a hand up? Nobody's got a question? Okay, great. Thanks very much for being here. Obviously, feel free to email me when you like. You will get an email, follow-up email, probably two actually. One, an automatically generated follow-up email, and then you will get an email from me letting you know when the recording is available. And the recording will be, I'll be embedding it on the resources page, that tiny.cc Time More page. they'll have the recording of this webinar on there in a few hours by the end of the day. So thank you for your time today and your participation. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. Goodbye.